So for the warm-up, what's the first step we do? Evaluate the function when x is -2, 0, and 3.
Gotta plug in -2, 0, and 3 for the x.
So did you guys all make a chart?
Yes.
Yeah. And what's our function? Okay. So our x values are -2, 0, and 3. So what's our first step for -2? Yeah.
You do 12 times -2 plus 1.
And what did you get for your answer? Anyone else? Yeah. -23. Is that what everyone else got?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah.
Good job, Brayden.
Okay. So I do the same thing for 0.
Yeah. Yes, but replace the -2.
So what did you get?
1.
So what did you get?
1.
1. And what do you do for 3?
37.
Wait, you didn't do.
You gotta do 12 times 3 plus 1. And then
So what's 12 times 3?
36.
Plus 1.
37.
Did everyone get those numbers?
Yes.
Okay. Number 2. Find the value of x so that the function has the given value. What's our given value?
2.
2. So how do we solve this one? Where do we put the 2?
And x.
In for x?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're trying to,
No.
what are we
No,
trying to
no.
find?
2.
Yeah.
Don't you put it in for g because you're trying to find the function, the value of x?
Yeah, so we're trying to find the value of x. So we don't want to plug anything in for x. So we're trying to solve for x. So that 2 is going to go in for this g of x, which you can always rewrite into y. It would be 2 equals -x plus 5. Does everyone have that?
Yeah.
And then what's your next step?
Subtract 5.
So you would get,
-3
I'm going to write it over here, -3 equals,
-x.
and then what do you do? Are you done?
No, you gotta subtract the negative.
Subtract a negative?
No, you take away the negatives.
Divide by a negative?
Yeah.
Divide by -1. So x equals,
3. I said that.
did everyone get 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're going on to our lesson today, which is all about parent functions. Does anyone know what a parent function is? No.
No, the big function.
Kind of the big
Little
function. Okay, so the parent function. The parent function goes in this first line. This function is the most basic linear function. So the most basic linear function is like the parent. And then when you start changing things like the slope and the x-intercept, those are more unique functions. So just y equals x is the parent function. So for the line y equals x, what's the y-intercept? 0. And what's the slope for y equals x? Not 0. 1.
1.
There's always that imaginary 1 right there.
How'd you know that the y-intercept was 0?
Because
to find
it's
the
smarter
y-intercept,
than this.
because to find the y-intercept, you have to make the x 0 and x and y equals x.
Okay, that's a good way. If we would have made y-intercept, we set x to 0. If we did that on this equation, x becomes 0, we'd say y equals 0. And then the y-intercept is 0. Also remember our equation y equals mx plus b, and that b is our y-intercept. We don't have that anymore when Abby's ran it up. We don't have that plus b, right? If it's not listed, that means that the y-intercept is only at the origin. So if that plus b is missing and you just see y equals 7x, well, that means your y-intercept is at 0. Okay?
Oh.
So y equals x is really written in slope-intercept form, right?
Yeah.
Because your m is just 1 and your b is 0, because it's left off. So graphing this is pretty simple, right? If you start at 0, so you do rise over run, you would go up by 1, then over by up 1, over 1, that would be your next point. What would you do to find your next point?
Yeah.
Up 1 over 1.
Up 1.
Make sure everyone's putting this in their notes. You should be copying that we have.
So that's your line. So that's the most simplest line in slope-intercept form. That would be your parent function. That's before we change anything. Does everyone have that line written down?
Yeah.
Drawn on? Does everyone know how we found that? Okay. So now we have our parent. Now we're going to start comparing it to lines that we've changed a little bit.
If you need to zoom in, you just have to.
So, f of x equals x. Is that our parent function?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it written in slope-intercept form?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is our y-intercept?
0.
And what's our slope?
1.
Okay. So now, if you look down at p of x, is that written in slope-intercept form?
Yeah.
So what would our slope
I
be?
know it's not.
For p of x equals x minus 4.
Our slope would be
What?
So it would be 1. Because there's no other number there. So it's just 1. And what would our y-intercept be?
-4.
Negative 4.
Make sure, I'm going to stop real quick. Make sure, because I noticed on you guys' quizzes, y-intercept means it crosses the y-axis. It's on that y-axis. Some of you guys, when you were doing the y-intercept, you went down that -4, but then you went over somewhere else. That doesn't cross the y-axis anymore. So if we have in our slope, or in our slope-intercept form, the -4, that means -4, I can put a coordinate point on 0, -4. That point is on the x-axis. So that's the most important part you're going to do first. Put that point on. Once you have your y-intercept, now you use your slope and you can make as many coordinate points as you need just based off your slope and that y-intercept. So make sure you're copying this down in your notes because you will see this today.
Okay. So now can we graph this line? X minus 4.
Yeah.
Is that easy to graph now that we have 1 point already down? Okay, how do you graph it?
Up 1 over
Get another point and you keep going until you have enough points to make a line. Okay, So now we're comparing these two graphs. So what have we done differently for the graph of x minus 4 than we did for our parent function? What has changed between this line and our red line? Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A is parallel and B is not parallel.
Yes. So these two, we're not going to be yet, but yes, these two are parallel because they have the same slope, right? So we did not change the slope. But what did we change? Yeah?
The y-intercept.
Yes. So we translated it down 4 units, right? So it's like the same line, just shifted down.
So when they're going to ask us, guys, to compare the graph, we want to compare two things. So on your homework tonight, on your test, when we ask you to compare a line with the parent function, two things you should mention. One, compare the slope. On the parent function and this one, our slope is the same. And if we have the same slope, that means the lines are parallel. So you can say one, the parent function and what was this one? Line of g of x or whatever. They have the same slope of 1, so the lines are parallel. And then the second point you want to make is describe their y-intercept. And we always start with the parent function and go to the other line. So we'll say the line of gx, line of gx translated, slid, moved, any of those words are the same thing, -4 down. So you're showing us where the point was on its y-intercept. 2 points. Always make those, and you'll do great comparing two lines.
Does that make sense? Okay. So for B, over here, is that in y equals mx plus b form?
Yeah.
So that one.
No, it's not.
Why not?
Because there's no plus b.
Is there a plus b here? So what would our b be when there's no plus b? B plus 0. And what's our slope?
-2.
So if we know where our b is, it would be 0, 0, right? That's where we cross the axis. So can you graph this line?
Yeah.
-2x. You're starting from point 0, 0. You can graph it. So you do a rise over run, but we're rising -2. So what do?
I go down.
Down -2
And over 1.
and over 1. And same. Over 1. Make our line. Okay. So this is our new line, and this is the parent. What's different? Do they have it? So what are we comparing? What are the two things we need to compare? It's on the board.
Slope and y-intercept.
So are the slopes the same?
Yes. Wait.
On B,
No.
Yes, no,
they're not. Because what's the slope of our parent function?
1.
1. And what's the slope of our new one?
-2.
Are those the same?
No.
So because the slope of graph Q is -2. Oh, it's not. This is the slope of the graph of Q. Left to right. And this, okay, so the slope of Q is -2. And what's the slope of F? 1. So slopes are different. But also, what's different in the y-intercepts? Are they the same or different?
You're different.
the same.
Well, they-
0.
So what's
Oh,
the
yes,
y-intercept of f of x equals x? Y equals x.
0.
You plus 0, right?
Mhm.
That one's 0 too. So they are the same.
They are the same. So remember when you're comparing, so on your homework tonight, Those are just going to compare those two things. You have to mention them, say if they're the same or if they're different. Okay. So, we have the parent function. Y equals x. What's the slope of that? Y equals x.
0, 1.
And what's the y-intercept?
0.
Okay. So g of x. What's the slope for this one?
2. Oh, wait, no, we don't know it.
We don't know the slope for a?
Yeah, it's on 1.
I think we know the slope.
Wait, 1.
Because there's just x. So remember when you have 1x, you can rewrite that as just x.
Yeah.
So when you just have x there, you can always pop in a 1. Because this one is just x, but we know its slope is 1. So same thing. 1x. So our slope is x, and what's our b?
2 is 2.
M is 1. B is 2 plus 2. So what's the first point that we plot on the graph?
2. Or just 2.
0, 2?
Yeah, 2 on the y-axis.
Because it intercepts the y-axis. Y to the sky, it's this one. 2. So now what do we do? Now we want to graph this line, x plus 2.
Up 1 over 1.
Up 1 over 1? Is that what everyone says?
Yeah,
Yeah. Nobody else talking.
I'm kind of talking.
Stop.
Does everyone else get this? Does this make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
I'm participating. Everyone else is tired.
I'm participating too.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So, we have our g of x. Do you guys want to graph? Should we graph our parent function? That make it easier. So we
Yeah.
can compare. So our parent function. We have what's our b for our parent function,
0.
and what's our slope?
1.
Up 1 over 1. Up 1 over 1. Right? So when we compare, what do we compare?
The y-intercept.
What are the two things we compare?
Slope and y-intercept.
I was gonna say that.
It's okay. So, our slope. So our slopes, are they the same or different?
They're the same. It's just up 1 over 1. Up 1 over 1.
So the slopes are the same. But what about the y-intercept?
Oh, that's different.
Oh, that's different.
It's 2 different.
I need to hear from other people.
My name is Jeff.
Are the y-intercepts the same or different?
They're different.
And yes, by how much? What's
2.
plus positive 2 or negative 2?
Positive.
Positive 2, because this is a parent function, and we went up 1, 2. So we're minor intercepts. So g of x, the y-intercept for g of x is 2 greater than it is for the parent function f of x. Y-intercepts, so g of x. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, what about for p? What's our m?
Negative 1/3.
Does everyone agree?
Yeah, it's negative 1/3, just like Josh said.
How did you find that?
Cause it's in front of the x, so yeah.
What's our b?
0.
Okay, so what's the first point that we plot?
0.
0?
Yeah, 0, 0. 0.
Because that's what our b is.
Yeah.
So that means it intercepts the y-axis at x equals 0. That's always the first thing we plot. And then from there, what do we do? Rise
go,
over run.
Negative 1/3, so you go down 1 over 3.
Down 1 over 3. Is
Yeah.
that what everyone would do?
Yeah.
Down 1 over
That's
1,
fine.
2, 3.
Come on, Josh.
Down 1 over 1, 2, 3. Yes?
Are we going negative sides or positive sides? Since it's a negative 1/3.
No, so it's a negative 1/3 means you go down 1 to the negative 1.
So remember, rise over run. So our rise, so it's negative 1 over 3. So we're rising a negative 1. So we're going down, and then we're running over 3. And then we can draw our line. Okay, so what's our parent function? I'm going to call someone else. What's our parent function? It's on the board. On the board, right there.
My name's Ethan.
Joshua.
What's the parent function?
F(x) equals x.
Okay, perfect. And what's the slope of that?
This slope is 1,
And what's the y-intercept?
0.
So, blue. So, what's the first plot that we point? Point that we plot.
0.
0, 0.
0, 0.
And then what do we do? Rise over run.
Up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1.
So, if you look at all of the ones we've done, the parent function never changes. It's there. It's there. The slope never changes. The y-intercept never changes.
Yeah.
So that's something you can graph really easily. So how would we compare these? What are the two things we need to compare?
Slope and y-intercept.
The m and the b. So are the slopes the same?
No, yeah, no.
So the slope of f of x is 1. Slope of f of x is 1. And the slope of p of x is, what's the slope of p of x? Our red line. Negative 1 over 3. But are the confusion? Who said that? Are you good? Which part? Which part?
We're good.
Okay, are you sure? Okay. So, is our y-intercept the same?
No,
Yeah.
yeah. It's 0, 0, 0.
If they intercept at the 0, 0 line.
So this is our y-axis. So y-axis. And our y-intercept is where it crosses the y. So they're both 0. So they're both 0.
Both.
Yeah, both 0. Okay. We should be getting a little faster on this. These are all the same. So, this is our parent function. What's the slope?
1.
Every single time. Don't forget that.
And what's our b?
For the parent function.
So is that going to be easy to graph? Can you graph that?
Yeah.
What's the first point?
Negative 3. Or 0.
For our parent function.
0.
0, 0. And then what?
1, 1, 1. Go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1.
So remember, when you guys do your parent function, that one should be easy. You really shouldn't even have to plot out each point. You should just know it's going through the origin, up 1 over 1. So it's going to be 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. Negative 1, negative 1, negative 2, negative 2. So you should be able to draw that one diagonal. Bisects that little angle perfect every single time.
Okay, but for g of x, what's our slope?
Negative. Oh, just 1. Yeah, it's just 1.
Just 1. And what's our y-intercept?
Negative 3.
So what's the first point that we plot for g?
Negative 3.
Negative 3?
Yeah.
So like here?
No,
That's negative 3.
1.
Negative 3, 1? That would be there.
No, negative 3 on the y-axis. Sorry, no.
Negative 3 on the y-axis. So that would be 0. So not moving on the x. Negative 3. Right? Right?
Yeah.
So what's next? So then what do we do? How do we graph it?
Up 3 over 1.
Up 3 over 1.
No, up 1.
Go up 1, 1.
I'm thinking of B.
We're not doing B. We're
No,
doing
I
A.
already did.
So what's our slope?
1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1.
Like that?
Yeah.
1, 1, 2.
So what are the two things that we're comparing?
The y.
The y-intercept, the slope.
And the slope.
That's the first.
Y. Hey guys. So are the slopes the same?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's see.
And what about the y-intercepts?
No.
Yeah.
Not the same. So g of x, they differ by negative 3. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So what about for this one? What's the parent function for b?
Oh, I know.
Anyone else? What's the parent function? It's been the same for the last 6 problems. Yeah. Yeah. So our parent function is f of x equals x. So we would start at 0, 0. And we'll go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Right?
Yeah.
That should get pretty easy to graph. So there's not a whole lot of thought. But what about for this one? I did it in a different color. I meant to do that in black. That's okay. Okay, so what's our m?
That's alright.
M is 3.
Everyone know how we got m to be 3?
Yeah, because it's foot of the x. It's like if x.
What's our b?
0.
So what's the first point that we plot?
Up 0, 0. 0.
I heard a 3.
Who said
Is it 3 or is it 0, 0?
0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
And then what do we do? Our m is 3.
Then you go up 3 over 1.
Because remember, so our m is like 3 over 1. So we're rising 3, and we're running 1. Up 3. 1, 2, 3 over 1. Right? So it's a super steep line. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's exactly what I got.
So everyone should have the same exact mountains. Exact same, and the exact same answers. So what are the two things we need to compare?
Slope and y.
Slope
No, I was
and y-intercept. Okay, are the slopes the same?
No.
No. The slope of f of x is 1, and the slope of p of x is 3. M equals 1, and then in red we have m is 3. So what about our y-intercepts though? Are they the same?
They're the same.
Yes.
Are they the same for this table?
Yes.
Yeah, they're the same.
Aiden, you don't speak for their table. I speak.
Okay. And remember guys, what's the first thing you should check before you graph? Is that both of the equations are in which format?
Y equals C.
They always have to be written in this equation. Okay. Oh, we're almost out of here, but this one we should do pretty quickly. So, the number of hours people in the United States spend playing video games each year from 1998 to 2001 can be modeled by the equation f of x is 11.9x plus 46.4. So graph the function Okay, you guys can all graph the function. How to do that? I don't think you need me to do that. Everyone graph the function on their own. Does everyone have the line graph?
Yeah.
Shouldn't be too hard. Did you find your M? What's your M? What's your slope?
11.9.
And what's your B?
46.4.
So what do you graph first? What's the first
46.
point?
Your B. 46.4.
I just estimated it a little bit. And then you're going to rise up almost 12 over 1. Okay. And we're going to go pretty fast because we're almost out of here. Find the value of f of x when x equals 2.
Why don't we
Stop it here.
and then we'll finish it up and finish this question.
Okay.
Just because I want to make sure everyone knows the sign. Alright. So biggest thing to remember, guys, continue to look at what Ms. Bidwell is saying. Why? Oh, stay focused up here. I'm going over this for a purpose. Y equals mx plus b. M, whatever comes before your x is your slope. B is your y-intercept. Your parent function always goes through the origin in points 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. It always has a slope of 1. Your homework for tonight. Lesson 4.7 worksheet. It is on OneNote, but I have the paper copy right here. So if you want it, please come and get it right now.